This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Ashley, and today I am overrun by Canadians.
So I'm Jessica, the other co-host, Canadian. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest. She is one of our listeners. She's really freaking cool, and she works for a Canadian company called Haunted Walks. And they're run in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto. And she's here to tell us some really cool stories. So we're really excited.
Aw, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Her name's Rochelle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could just be
She
like the
has a name.
nameless wonder. Before we start, though, Jessica, I want to settle this buried versus buried argument. Because you are the only person that I know, and I'm Canadian too, by the way, that says buried.
Okay, so it's not a Canadian thing.
No,
it's a Jessica thing.
Absolutely not a Canadian thing.
Okay, in my defense, I think I said it incorrectly once, and then I decided to die on that hill, so now I have to say it.
You're like, no, that's just how we say it.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking with it.
All of Canada, they bury.
I mean, there is like it's not as prominent as say like a Texan versus like a Californian accent, but there are a lot of regional differences around Canada and even just around Ontario. And so, I mean, it could be an accent.
Well, and I lived on the East Coast for like a year and a half too, so I picked up on their accent pretty well.
Yeah. So you say things like house.
Yeah.
House. Going back to the house.
Ooh.
Most of my family's from the East Coast too, and so every time I'm around them, I think it's funny listening to their accents.
I know.
So is that where the traditional, when I think of Canadian, like oot and a boot, is that the East Coast?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to say most of the quotes about what it's like to be a haunted walk guide and why everyone loves it so much till the end, but Elaine just sent through one that I feel like I need to just share right now because it's amazing. And it is so her favorite thing about working for the Haunted Walk, I get weird and talk to people professionally.
All right, Rochelle, then we want you to get weird and talk to us.
Okie dokie. A little bit about us, as Jessica had mentioned, we are a ghost tour company, and we give some pretty awesome ghost tours in Kingston, Toronto, and Ottawa, 3 pretty cool historic Canadian cities. Really, really immersive, really, really interactive, a whole lot of fun, if I do say so myself. I promise I'm not just being biased. I used to go on these tours all the time before I even became a guide. So
they're really cool.
Yeah. So if you are bored at home, never fear. The Haunted Walk is here to save you. So the haunting at home, which is really, really cool. So there's a full Q&A or a frequently asked questions on the website if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of all of the things that you can do. So essentially what it is a ghostly online audio experience, and it's created by the paranormal experts that we have at Haunted Walk, Jim Dean being one of them, the guy from Haunted Talks, if you are a listener of that podcast too. And if you're not, go over and listen to Haunted Talks if you want some creepy, cool fun as well.
I agree. Go listen. It's really cool. Jim is awesome.
He's really, really awesome. Really good at scaring people who do have a fear of sirens, stuff like that. So turn the lights down low, conduct a series of fun and spooky experiments in your own home. So you don't even have to leave, don't have to worry about COVID being a thing. You can experience a spine-tingling and thought-provoking night of supernatural thrills and chills. So
you don't even have to put pants on.
Yeah, don't even have to. No pants, stance off.
Exactly. No pants party.
No pants party.
Ooh. Okay, but if I was a ghost and you found me and did not have pants on, I would not be super happy because I potentially have to be wearing pants because I'm a ghost.
I think one of the number one questions that I've ever gotten on a tour is, why are there no ghosts from nowadays? And I was like, do you really think that would be so interesting? You look over and you see a ghost dancing to like Britney Spears with like their flip phone
You'd be like, what
hand,
is wrong with that
yeah.
person? That's it.
maybe like
Yeah.
100 years from now, when we're literally like flying in our hovercrafts and like hologramming into tours, then that would be an interesting ghost. But
Yeah, that's
it's too
true.
soon. It's too soon. I'm still living in the early 2000s. Okay, so what's cool about the Haunting at Home is it's actually on sale, so fun
Yay.
and discounted. So it is regular $34.99 Canadian. But if you go right now, you can get it for $19.99 Canadian. That's $15 USD.
Woo-woo.
And it includes 6 guided paranormal experiences, using all sorts of traditional techniques from parapsychology and modern ghost hunting techniques, with ours truly, Jim Dean from Haunted Talks, who
Yay.
graciously gave me permission to come on your podcast and talk all about it.
Yay.
Thanks,
So
Jen.
you can start anywhere and any time, and you can literally do it in as many different locations as you want to, for 90 days. So when you finally buy into it and you get your access code, you've got 90 days, and you can use it however many times and however many places that you want. And it is
That's
Zoom adaptable. So if you do have people that can't be in your household right now, no worries, they can Zoom in and you can do it all together. And if you're
That's
still
awesome.
not sold, you can listen to a sample if you go to hauntedwalk.com, which is really cool. And then if you're still not sold, I wrote down some cool reviews.
Ooh.
So Sarah from Williamsburg, VA. Ashley, what state is VA?
Virginia.
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 Sorry, I'm not Ashley, but sorry.
Yeah, geez, Jessica.
I mean, somebody that knows geography. My animals were with me during this entire process. At 2 points during the session, my dog sat up, wide eyes, ears forward, and looking straight at me. He did not bark, act afraid, or aggressive, but seemed to sense something was about to happen.
Oh.
Oof.
So if that doesn't get your heart racing, I don't know what else will. Go to hauntedwalk.com. You'll learn all about it. And the other thing that you can do is tune into the virtual haunted campfires that we have. So the next one is coming up on April 10th. So that is literally this week at 8 p.m. And it's going to be all about New Mexico, spirits of the Southwest. And then the week after, or the 17th, is that the week after or 2 weeks after, is Rocky Mountain Ghosts. So some more Canadian ghosts. So it's really cool. Grab yourself a beverage, cozy up with a warm blankie, and get ready for some spooky chills at home. So a lot of our Haunted Walk guides have been going on to tell stories, and then we invite people from all over the world, some of the best ghost storytellers, and talk about some of the coolest haunted locations from all around the world. So you can join in, again, from the safety and comfort of your own home on Zoom, and have some interactive and spooky fun. So you don't need a Zoom account. You just click into the link. Your family and friends can join. It is advised 12 and up, a little spooky matter, stuff like that. You don't even need to watch it live. So if you know you're going to be doing something else, or you're going to be out when it does actually go live, no big deal. You can watch it whenever you like to. And so that is $13 per household per episode, $10 USD. And there's a Q&A always at the end. So if you have some questions that come up throughout the campfire, you can have those answered by those storytellers that you get to meet, which is so fun.
Yeah, we just purchased the Halifax Citadel one, which was a previous episode. So because
and you can go back and you can purchase episodes that have already been released. So if one catches your fancy, you can go back and you can listen to that whenever you like to.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to trying that one, because I think that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. And one of the things I wanted to point out too, for anybody who's like me, that is a complete and utter chicken, one of the things on the website, the frequently asked questions, is that these are not intended to stir anything up. It's just supposed to show you something that is already there. So no worries if you're worried about like summoning a demon. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of it is just learning about ghost hunting and ghost hunting techniques and how they differed throughout the ages compared to some of the modern technology that our current ghost hunters tend to be using. So it's educational and it's fun. Another thing I wanted to point out too, if you are ever in the position to actually come on our tours and you don't really know which tour would be appropriate for you and your family, especially if you are coming with a family, maybe with some young children, all of our tours are on a ghosty rating system out of 5 ghosts. So 3 out of 5 ghosts, that's going to be your family-friendly tours. And then, of course, the more ghosts, the spookier, the more chilling. And then until you get up to the haunting, like the haunting at Black Creek, which Jessica got to do, which is a strictly 18
It was so
plus.
cool.
So don't bring your kids to that one. They would not be allowed in.
That was super creepy. Like, it was amazing, but it was super creepy. And I was traumatized.
Yeah, I have heard a lot. I have yet to get to do it myself, but I have heard so many stories from like some of the other guides that have gone up
It's
and done
so
it and said the same thing.
creepy.
It's a lot of fun. It's
Yeah.
spooky as heck.
And like when
too.
we
Yeah.
went, it was a Friday the 13th, a full moon, and there was a storm.
Ooh, that's awesome.
all of the
Yeah.
like perfect setup. That's the best. The best is when like nature just works in your
Yeah.
favor on a tour. Like in Kingston on our downtown tour route, you can really clearly hear anytime City Hall rings the bell, like on the hour, or when St. George's rings the cathedral bell on the half hour. And so anytime you're like, welcome to the Haunted Walks, and
That's
then the
awesome.
clock goes, everyone's just like jaw drop. Did you do that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
or when like when I come into the, so one of the stories that I have to share is about the courthouse, and you'll see there's things about a full moon and stuff like that. And so the best is when you like walk in to the courthouse parking lot and it's like a perfect full moon and everything is just like perfect and spooky, and then like a black cat crosses the path, or like
cool.
there's 3 cats. There's 3 haunted walk cats. They're always out and about on the route. They are so cute. They steal the spotlight every single time because they come right up and they rub against. I'll be telling a story and I have like a cat like moving in between my legs. And it's so funny. And we had 2 rookie guides join us this past season, and one of them thought that we were literally joking with him and like saying that, oh yeah, there's these 3 cats that we all know about, because he never saw any of them like the entire season until right at the very end when he finally saw one of the cats. He was like, I thought you were pulling my leg. I thought this was some kind of initiation thing. Like these cats, I never saw them. All I wanted was to see the cats.
That would be my reaction too.
Well, you know what's funny? On one of the Charleston walks that I went on, there was a cat too.
Okay, tell us a story.
Okay. So I want to start with 2 stories from Fort Henry, which is my personal favorite tour to give. So a little bit about Fort Henry. It is an old fort here in Kingston. It was originally built way back in 1835. That's the current fort still standing there. There was a previous fort on site built for the War of 1812, but the fort has since been rebuilt because it did serve a different purpose by the time 1835 rolled around. So it is a historical site. It is a working museum as well. If you've ever been to Black Creek Pioneer Village, for example, or Upper Canada Village, or any other kind of historical interpretation place, it's kind of like that. So you go during the day and you are full on 1867, right in the British regiment there. And so it is really cool if you get a chance to go and visit it. So, talking about tunnels. So there have been many tales of tunnels underneath Fort Henry leading to all sorts of things around town. So places like City Hall, the Martello Towers. If you've never heard of a Martello Tower, what it essentially is a little tiny, short, fat tower, which is a fortification along our waterfront that just helps keep us safe from an impending American attack. Okay, and even some of the downtown pubs, there have been so many rumors that you can literally get from Fort Henry to downtown by the tunnels, and that is nothing more than rumors. But Fort Henry does have 3 tunnels underneath. None of them lead any further than the waterfront, though. So the first 2 lead you under the wall and up into one of the fort's 2 reverse firing chambers, while the third simply leads you from the privies down out to the bay. Kind of an old school sewage pipe, you might call it. So you definitely don't want to go into those tunnels. But the west firing chamber in particular.
Ooh, it's like Shawshank.
Yeah, exactly. Like super gross. Absolutely don't want to do it. It absolutely will not get you to the pubs downtown. Absolutely not. It'll get you really smelly. Probably diseases.
Ew.
So in 1838, 15 men were being held captive as prisoners of war at Fort Henry for their involvement in the Upper Canada rebellions. Ashley, have you ever heard of the Upper Canada rebellions, or what Upper Canada / Lower Canada was?
I did not know that there was even people in Upper Canada because it's so cold.
What?
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me explain this. I read somewhere that majority of the Canadian population lives by the border because it's too cold in the north.
True. And you know what Upper Canada is?
Nope.
Literally the area of Canada that's by the border.
Then what's Lower
Whereas
Canada?
Lower Canada is further north. Yeah, so essentially, you know how like rivers and stuff flow downwards?
Yeah.
Or flow, the way the river ran, it was like Upper Canada was upriver from Lower Canada, which is actually further south than Lower Canada.
Oh, okay.
And so Upper Canada is like the area that a lot of people live in currently, and Lower Canada was further north than that.
Okay.
And absolutely not way up north in the territories where it's too cold to do anything.
So Upper Canada is actually more south.
Yeah.
That makes no sense, and that's why Canadians are wrong. But go ahead.
It's like the Greenland is icy and Iceland is green dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Same kind of thing.
Okay.
It's backwards.
Got it.
It's not exactly north and south, but like it's upriver, downriver. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that much about it, but okay. So in 1838, 15 men were being held captive as prisoners of war for their involvement in the Upper Canada rebellions. So there was big fights going on in between Upper and Lower Canada. You can look into that on your own time if you like. But the fate that awaited them all was most likely death by hanging, which was our number one capital punishment, and it was right up until capital punishment was abolished in Canada, which really wasn't until way, way too late. But unlike the States, you guys still have capital punishment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't realize you guys didn't have capital punishment at all.
No, not at all. Not since, well, the last hanging was in the 60s. It was a double hanging at the Don jail. One of the guys' heads popped off.
Cool.
So it was very gruesome. Very gruesome, yeah. Yeah, so the last hanging was in the 60s, but it wasn't technically until like the early 70s, I believe, that it officially was abolished. But now you can just get life in prison, but you can get maximum, like multiple life sentences. So, like, you don't just kill off your prisoners.
That's so funny. I love that Ashley's face is like,
some of our
pure
states
disgust.
have capital punishment still, although execution of them is very rare because they get so many appeals and they're on death row for so long. But a lot of states are going away from it, which I think is good. I'm not a fan of capital punishment, so.
Alrighty, so death by hanging, not a fun fate. So this impending doom gave them all the motivation they needed to attempt an escape, especially since hangings back then didn't always go to plan. As I just mentioned with the last hanging in Canada, definitely didn't go to plan. But earlier this same year, so this is back in 1838 still, a hanging that took place at the Old County Jail here in Kingston definitely didn't go smoothly. Several prisoners were awaiting their fate for their involvement in the Battle of the Windmill, which was one of the battles within the Upper Canada rebellions. But no one expected what was to come when Martin Woodruff stepped up to the gallows. Poor Woodruff was given a rookie executioner, and when he was dropped to hang, he just wouldn't die. So in front of a horrified crowd of about 200 onlookers, Woodruff dangled and writhed, slowly suffocating.
Ooh.
Ew. Yeah, like that, how horrible. Like you're waiting to die and then you just don't.
That's a horrible way to go.
That's awful. So an experienced executioner at the time would have known what to do in this situation. They would have just gone down to the bottom of the gallows, given any of the death defier's legs a sharp tug to snap their neck and, of course, end their suffering. But not Woodruff's rookie. He instead decided he would just reel him right back up to the top of the gallows, and drop him.
Oh no!
Yeah. Oh no, it gets worse. It really
Oh,
does.
So they reeled him
no!
up by his neck?
Yeah, like literally a fish on a fishing rod. Reeled him right up. All right. And
Oh my
God.
goodness.
once more, he just wouldn't die. Still, number 2 didn't work. So he was reeled up and dropped again. But third time was not a charm for poor Martin Woodruff, because it took 4 times dropping from the gallows to finally end
Gosh.
the poor man's suffering.
That poor
How
man.
awful.
Well, no wonder he haunts now.
Yeah. Can you imagine? You're like, they give you the new guy on the job.
Right?
Like, that's the last instance that you want to have, like, the new kid on the job.
Oh gosh. I hope he haunted that guy.
I know, right? So, back to the prisoners who escaped Fort Henry. They were led by one man by the name of John Montgomery. So they managed to dig themselves out of the room they were being held in and make it down to the west firing chambers. And when they were there, they pushed away the cannon window shutters and jumped down into the dry ditch underneath, which was quite a lengthy fall. And John Montgomery, who was their leader, broke his leg in the process.
I was gonna ask if they broke anything.
Yeah, so he did. He broke his leg, but he still managed to escape with the others by climbing the wall of the fort, which is like a 30-foot high wall, using a makeshift ladder, all throughout a horrible, terrible storm, of course.
With a broken leg, that man deserved to be
With
free.
a broken leg! And they managed to reach the U.S., all with this guy's broken leg, and then they were all pardoned and allowed to return to Canada after they made it to the U.S. So, kind of nice.
Wow.
End to that story.
Yeah,
but
okay.
John Montgomery is kind of key here, because at his original trial, before he was taken prisoner and taken to Fort Henry, it was said that he placed kind of a curse on the judge and the jury at his trial, which is really interesting. So Montgomery was the owner of Montgomery's Tavern on Yonge Street in Toronto, which was the site of the battle at Montgomery's Tavern during the Upper Canada Rebellion. So the Upper Canada Rebellions are essentially made up of a lot of smaller battles around the area. Montgomery didn't actually fight in any of these battles, but he did ensure that all who did in the area of the Battle of Montgomery's Tavern were being well fed. So what a nice guy.
Okay.
He was quoted at his trial saying, "I have not had a fair trial. There are witnesses here who have sworn my life away. These perjurers will never die a natural death. And when you, sir, and the jury have died and perished in hell's flames, John Montgomery will yet be living on Yonge Street."
Ooh.
And he did exactly
That's
that.
so creepy.
He died at the ripe old age of 96, far outliving anyone who attended that trial.
Oh my gosh.
So definitely some truth to that curse. And he's still around. Him and his men are still around Fort Henry. There have been so many times where tour guides will start to take their groups down into the tunnels and hear the shouts of men coming from within the firing chambers. Ooh. And by the time they reach the firing chambers themselves, they'll start hearing the shouts coming from down in the dry ditch where they would have hopped down into, where he broke his leg. And we would get tours hearing that like right after each other as well. It's just like on a constant loop of him and his men escaping the fort, which is super cool.
That's so cool.
So that's a fun one. I have a colleague named Cameron who tells that story better than anyone I have ever heard, because he gets right into the character of Montgomery. And so every time I tell that story, I try to like channel the way Cameron does it. He's so good and so funny in his delivery. And then Graham, who I mentioned earlier, does a joke about the Privy's Tunnel, which is so dry and so hilarious. I literally ruined his tour one time by like snort laughing at it. I was not expecting it. I love hearing other guides tell the stories. I love hearing the ways the ways is like you get the guides that are more dry, that are more calm and collective, and then you get the guides that are so into it, and it's a totally different experience. And no matter how many times you go on the tours, as long as you get a different guide every time, you're gonna have like an insanely different and really awesome experience every
That's
time.
really cool. Yeah.
So, Rochelle,
Yes.
have you experienced anything like in the tunnels or?
Yeah. So the tunnels is actually one of the only spots where I have experienced something a little unusual. So I always like to say that Fort Henry is so active that it's kind of creepy if nothing happens in a night. Because you just get so used to the noises, you get used to the footsteps, you get used to the doors slamming. And so when it's a quiet night, that's when it gets kind of creepy.
Gotcha.
But to go down into the tunnels, they have like these big grated iron doors that swing across and bolt shut. So nobody can just like willy-nilly go down into the tunnels. And they're the iron doors that have been there since the beginning. And they are heavy, like really, really heavy. Like you really have to give them a tug to get them to budge. And so when we go through with our tours, they're usually just pulled open all the way. And I'm leading my group down into the tunnels to tell that story. And I didn't say like shut the door behind us, nothing of that sort. And if somebody were to think to like maybe shut the door behind us, they'd probably give it like a bit of a tug and realize that it wasn't going to budge and leave it. Like I can't imagine somebody literally like yanking the door shut, and I didn't hear a creak or anything like that as I was descending down into the tunnels. But by the time I finished the story and was leading them back out of the tunnels, I'm coming up the stairs and the grated door is fully shut.
Ew.
Like fully shut. And in the back of my mind, all I'm thinking of is if this door is locked right now, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Because I have my phone on me, but all of the limestone that Fort Henry is built out of is essentially like a battery drainer, and your phone's not going to work. And so I can't use my phone to get a hold of Graham, who was there with me that night. And he doesn't have a tour for like a half hour behind me. So I would be stuck down here waiting for him to come down. So in my head, I was like, what's the best way to tell my group that I literally have to yell for help to get us out of the tunnel?
Oh my god.
Luckily though, it was unlocked and I just had to give it a push to get it open. But even so, I was like, did anybody shut this behind us? And everyone was like, no. We thought that was like a bit. I'm like, no.
Oh gosh.
So that's kind of the creepiest thing that's happened to me. And then I have a couple stories of creepy things that have happened to other folks. But I do want to tell you the other Fort Henry story because it's actually a lot more gruesome.
Okay.
Because these are like artillery accidents that actually happened, and they are horrifying. So around a century ago, the fort was actually completely empty. They still had caretakers working, and a caretaker by the name of Marsh was still in charge of making sure that the noonday gun at the fort entry gate was still fired off daily. One fateful day, Marsh fired off his gun as usual, but he did happen to be in a bit of a hurry to get downtown. Not wanting to be late to return, he decided that he could maybe save himself some time by having the gun already loaded and ready to go for the next fire. You let me know if you can see where this one's going.
Yeah.
But Marsh barely left like no time at all after he fired the gun to let the barrel of the gun cool down before he rammed home the second charge of gunpowder.
Oh.
There was still enough heat left in the barrel to set the gun off, and it fired as Marsh happened to be looking straight down the barrel.
Thank you.
So the last thing to ever go through his mind was the ramrod.
Oh my gosh.
How awful is that? And that's not even like the most gruesome artillery accident. So in 1838, gunner John Smith was running up to fire off one of the big guns that sits on top of the fort's walls, and he was using a paper cartridge to light it, and those were known to be like extremely dangerous. And poor Gunner Smith's cartridge was torn and subsequently ignited the gun before he had any time to clear the area of the blast. He was blown off of the inner wall.
Oh.
He then flew across the dry ditch and smacked into the outer wall and dropped the 30 feet down into the ditch below. And that's not the worst part. The worst part
Oh my gosh.
is he only died 6 long, excruciatingly painful hours later. 6 hours of sitting there in the dry ditch after being blown off of the fort wall and smacking into the other fort wall before you finally get some relief and die.
Jeez. Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah, awful. So it was a lot of fun to work at the fort back in the day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So in 2009, I'm sure you guys know Ghost Hunters, the TV show.
Yes.
Or heard of it anyways.
Yep.
So in 2009, they actually came to Fort Henry. They did a whole investigation for their TV series. And they caught on camera an orb of light traveling up and down the east side of the dry ditch, exactly where Gunner John Smith would have fell down. So maybe that was him still kind of hanging around.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
One, I feel like with such a horrible death like that, your spirit would kind of still hang around.
Yeah, because you have so much unfinished. And that's why a lot of people believe that Fort Henry is so insanely haunted, is because it was built for a battle that never happened. So there were never any battles fought on the grounds. And so the energy is still just waiting and waiting and waiting for that battle. And they do something called a sunset ceremony, which is essentially a battle reenactment at the fort. They do it at sundown. And every time they do it, the fort just wakes up. It is so active every night after a sunset ceremony. It is insane, the energy, because they're getting to live that battle that they never got from you pesky Americans.
Yeah. That's true, yeah. Or they're really pissed off and feel that they're getting mocked that they never, because they never got to have a battle, and then here they're like reenacting a battle, and they're like, fuck off, we didn't get one.
Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about some of the guides' experiences, because some of the other guides have had like nutso experiences that I never, ever, 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 ever want to have myself.
Ooh.
So these are a couple at the fort. So I mentioned a little bit earlier how there's a certain room where if you knock on the glass 3 times, like there's a good chance that you're going to get a knock back.
Yes.
And that's the Nils von Schultz room, and it's officers' quarters number 3. And it essentially is the room where they think Nils von Schultz, who was another political prisoner way back in the day during those Upper Canada rebellions, awaited his trial and execution. And so Abby Lee, lovely, lovely lady, said, I was in the Nils von Schultz room one night, and as I walked in the room, the door swung shut by itself. Not super unusual.
No.
Like I said, it's funny when stuff like that doesn't happen. That's when it gets creepy, because it's just so often that a door shuts or something like that happens. So not super unusual until I looked over to see the latch lift and the door swing open again by itself. Yeah.
I don't like
And
that.
so Connor also had an experience in that same room. He said that I had the Nils door be closed when I got there with the first tour. So the first tour of the night. After I confirmed it was open on the pre-tour check, I also had the door leading into the hall slam shut right as the tour approached it. An inward opening door that closed against the wind.
Ew.
Oh.
So what he's talking about in the pre-tour check is when we get up there for our shifts, we basically go down and we walk the route and we make sure that like the fort staff during the day didn't leave anything kind of out of place. Making sure that they left the doors unlocked for us, and making sure all the lights are turned off, all the doors are unlatched, and so like they can swing shut if spirits so choose to do that. And so we usually have to do that by ourselves, as we're up there in twos, maybe 3 of us. So, well, the one of us is like greeting all of the guests for the night. The other one of us gets to go down and do the pre-tour walkthrough. And a lot of the times it's already dark. And so it's definitely super bone chilling to do on its own. But to literally confirm that a door was open and ready and then have it literally slam closed or like be closed later on in the tour is horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, no,
I
thank you.
bet.
We have a lot of tour guides who just don't do the fort tour, or they do it once and they're like, I'll stay on the downtown tour because it is so insane. Like, so insane. So Maya, another lovely, lovely lady, said, I had the door between bakery and school refused to let me through. It felt like it was being pulled shut from the other side. This was on a school tour, so everyone in the group was only about 12.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Talk about being scarred for life.
Poor little kid.
And then Michelle, who seems to just have things happen to her left, right, and center on the tour. So that's kind of confusing our names. So we have a Rochelle and a Michelle, and I feel like sometimes we get each other's reviews constantly because no one knows how to spell my name, and so they call me Michelle, and then I don't know if it's for her or for me. But she's also an amazing guide, so we just both get good reviews all the time.
Of course.
Not being cocky or anything. So she says, besides having seen a ghost from the rampart, so that's like the top area of the wall looking down into one of the museum display rooms, having the doors slam, she's also had to ask Marianne, which is our bakery ghost, which I'm not going to spoil that story tonight, so you'll actually have to come on the tour for that one. Because it is a really good one. But she had to ask her to open a door when it wouldn't budge on her pre-tour walkthrough. And then she had a guest hear banging in the wine cellar, heard the creak of a lantern swinging, and then again the Nils von Schultz tap 3 times on the glass, get one back, room door slamming. She says she also had a little French boy tell me about the guard room ghost. She's bilingual, by the way. That's really important in the story, so she also speaks French. But she was giving the tour in English. He didn't speak English. Once she finished up in the bakery, a woman said that she heard footsteps up to the right. Oh, and the little boy told her about a ghost on the tour and what the ghost looked like before she even told the story in any language.
Oh.
Like, ugh. She said she once finished up in the bakery and a woman said she heard footsteps up to the right. The door, and then when she came out of the bakery, the door to that room upstairs was open, and it wasn't open before they went into the bakery.
Ew.
So, the ghost, Marianne, who is, we believe, the ghost of a little girl, moved a bread pan. She moved either a bread pan, wood, or a chair, and then shook her lantern. Literally, in the spot that she put it down, her lantern started to just shake. And like somebody literally grabbed a hold of it and started shaking it. And then the lights, of course, turned off, on and off in the rooms all around the tour route as well.
Oh.
So creepy, super creepy.
Yeah.
Fort Henry's creepy. End of story. It's a 4. I believe it's a 4 out of 5 ghost rating. So if you're looking for something to really scare your pants off and you're visiting Kingston, this lockdown has, of course, pushed us back a little bit, but we are in talks to get up and running as quickly as possible. And it is a fairly safe, as we are mostly outside and everybody will be wearing masks, activity to do once things start opening up again.
I really want to go.
Yeah. So
awesome.
you've never been to? Have you been to Kingston before, Jessica?
I've never been to Kingston.
I have.
Oh.
Have you?
Really?
No. I just want to be included.
So funny.
Do you have anything like Fort Henry around where you are, Ashley?
So we had in Charleston, we had like Fort Sumter, but that wasn't really haunted, or if it was, they didn't do any like haunted walks on it. I think probably the closest thing would be our old Charleston jail, which is like super duper haunted, just because of the atrocities that happened there. But there's no like tunnels or anything cool like that.
I mean, Fort Henry's tunnels aren't the greatest tunnels, that's for sure. They're kind of gross. They always, oh, excuse me, they always have like pigeons and frogs and giant spiders. That's my favorite. Like,
Ugh.
yeah, that's
Blech.
the worst. And I do not like spiders. So that's become like my go-to line when I see a big spider. I like kind of keep my lantern light down away from it. And I'm like, the only thing more spooky than the ghosts of Fort Henry are these, and then you lift your lantern and you reveal giant spiders, and then everybody's like,
Ew.
I need to leave right now, get me
Yeah.
out of here, because they are the size like bigger than my hand.
Oh, Rochelle. Okay, so I will be terrified of, like, I'm claustrophobic and arachnophobic. So,
Oh gosh.
So the fort's perfect for you.
uh-huh.
Well, if you are anybody feels a little claustrophobic or feels like maybe the fort's a little too intense, that's not a problem because that's not the only tour that we have here in Kingston.
Yay.
The original downtown tour, which is only 3 ghosts out of 5, so it is
Oh.
super family friendly. You're not going to be stuck inside any of the buildings for any amount of time. It is fully outside, so that in itself makes everything feel a little bit safer and a little bit
Yeah.
more accessible for those folks who tend to get a little bit nervous when it comes to things like being in enclosed small spaces and being in the dark. And so I do have 2 stories from that too, and they're kind of the more well-known stories from around Kingston. But the funniest thing, and kind of like an ironic thing that I've noticed working, going into my 5th season with this company, is that it's usually the people that aren't from Kingston that have heard of these stories. And the people that are from
Oh.
Kingston had never known before they came on the walk. And the only reason that they knew to come on the walk or thought to come on the walk is because they were like having people visiting. Like you never tend to
Oh.
really do the touristy things in your own city. Like I'm
True. Yeah.
like myself, like I lived in Toronto. I went to school in Toronto for 4 years, and I have never been up the CN Tower. But like that's the
What?
thing everyone does when they go to Toronto.
Are you
And I lived there for 4 years. Yeah, I've never been up it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Girl. It's nothing
And
special,
so
honestly.
I want to do the edge walk. Oh my gosh, would you do the edge walk? I want to do that so bad. So actually, like I don't know if you know what the CN Tower is. It's just
I
a
do not.
tall ass tower. You know, like the Seattle Space Needle?
Uh-huh.
Similar.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in Toronto, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
I think I do remember. I
Um,
went to Toronto once, and I think I do remember that
Okay, so you
building.
would have seen it. Yeah. It's just a really tall tower. Drake, if you are a fan of Drake's music,
Mhm.
I think he should have stuck to acting, but that's another debate. Don't come for me, people, if you are a Drake fan. One of his album covers is like him superimposed onto like the edge of the CN Tower. And they have
Oh.
this thing called the edge walk, in which you like get tied to a harness and essentially walk around the outside of the CN Tower and like hang off of it and everything.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'd shit
That
myself.
sounds awesome.
So I think I'd want to do that at some point.
I don't.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
I don't want to do
No.
that. Okay, Ashley can do that with you. I'll do the ghosty stuff with you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So probably the most like famous Kingston ghost stories is the story of Teresa's alleyway, which is everyone in Kingston calls it the Chez Piggy alleyway because it leads to a restaurant called Chez Piggy, but it's formerly known as Rochelot Court. And so there is a locally owned bookstore kind of along King Street, right where the entryway to this alley is. It's a little hole in the wall shop, and it was once home to a photographer's store way back in 1976. So it wasn't long after opening up that photographer's store that the photographer began noticing strange things happening inside his shop. And it was just mostly footsteps up and down the aisles when nobody was really there. One evening, his assistant and himself stayed late after closing up, determined to figure out what on earth was going on. And so I think you both will like this next little tidbit. They used an old Ouija board.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And they were very shocked when they did contact a spirit. Teresa Ignis Beam, the spirit called herself. What a name. She said that she was murdered in 1868 by a man named John Napier and that she had been pregnant at the time of her murder. All through a Ouija board, this information.
Oh, wow.
So the most shocking piece of information she gave, though, was that she claimed to be buried in the basement of the photographer shop.
If we ever have merch, that's gonna have to be on one of our things.
Buried. Claimed to be buried within the basement of the photographer's shop. But the info didn't just stop there, if you could believe it. She kept going on all through the Ouija board. She spelled out the name of a woman who allegedly lived on Wolf Island, which is an island right in between Kingston and New York. Give you kind of like a geological map of where this is located. So she gave the name of a woman who lived on this island and then mentioned that this woman would have a book with a Latin word in the title that would somehow help them out in giving Teresa a proper burial. So they were, of course, totally speechless, totally dumbfounded that they got any information, let alone all of this super specific information, that there was, of course, nothing left to do but check the phone book. Lo and behold, the woman who lived on the island was real, and she conveniently owned a bookstore. So Teresa knew exactly what she was talking about. The woman also knew immediately what book Teresa was trying to find, and it was a Roman Catholic ritual book for the burial of the dead.
Ooh.
So they knew what to do now. They just really didn't know where to start looking. Teresa says she had also, through the Ouija board, given them very specific directions as to where in the basement her body would be located, but the directions, they just wouldn't line up with the actual layout of the photographer's shop. So after a lot of looking, the photographer eventually left the shop, moved on to bigger, better things. Nothing to do with Teresa, I might add. But the next tenants experienced the exact same thing. They also used a Ouija board, and they also got all of the exact same information.
Ew.
Yeah. They even went so far as to dig around in the basement, but like the photographer had before them, they really found nothing but a few broken beer bottles and some dirt.
Lame.
So a few years after the photographer moved out, he was walking past the old shop and noticed there was construction going on around it. So he was wanting to see if they had found anything and asked the construction workers what was going on. And they said that they believed at one point his old shop was connected to the shop next door as one big, larger building because they had found old door frames that led from the photographer's shop to the shop directly next door. So maybe Teresa was buried under the neighboring side of that building, and maybe that's why her directions didn't seem to really make any sense. But unfortunately, the current owners of that shop haven't done any more looking or haven't wanted to do any more looking. But Teresa's ghost still lives on in the Shea Piggy or Rochelot Court alleyway. People have seen and heard strange noises in all of the shops, the restaurants, and there are a couple of cute little apartments surrounding the alleyway in which strange things have happened too. And a select few have been lucky enough to encounter her ghost directly. Just a few, though. She's been known to appear in some of those shops as well, but she is most often seen wearing a cross around her neck with her long dark hair hanging loose around her shoulders. But it is her catchphrase that's kind of what's truly chilling, and that is, "Please help me find my bones."
Ugh.
She's literally walked up to people and said that in the alleyway.
Ew.
Meh. Yeah.
Find her bones?
Yeah, help me find my bones. Because she's still buried there.
Well, I mean...
And nobody wants to go looking anymore, which is sad. But maybe for the best. I don't know.
Well, I mean, someone help that poor lady find her bones.
I know. And they don't even want to help her out. But that's probably the most infamous. So Creepy Canada. I don't know if you ever heard of that show, Jessica. It's kind of like a, I don't know, like a Mystery Hunters type show.
Oh,
So
yes, I've heard of it, yes.
yeah, so they actually did an episode featuring Teresa and talking about the alleyway and talking about that story too. So a lot of people who come to Kingston, especially who come to Kingston looking for the creepier things, will know that story. Whereas a lot of people who are from Kingston have no idea anything to do with that alleyway except for the fact that it's just like a creepy alleyway here in Kingston.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. And then, so for my final story, Frontenac County Courthouse and Jail. So going back to, I mentioned earlier a story with full moon and dowsing rods and all of that fun stuff. So the Frontenac County Courthouse and Jail, spelt Gaol, just like it was spelled in your episode last week.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So living for the old Gaols. Standing on the site of the old Frontenac County Courthouse and Jail, both originally opened back in 1867, still stands the courthouse and jailer's house. Sadly, they did tear the jail down back in 1974, but when it was standing, it would have been a rectangular cell block-shaped building that was attached to the jailer's house. If you were to stand in the parking lot of the still in use courthouse, you would literally find yourself standing in the exact spot where all of Kingston's hangings took place after 1857.
Ooh.
That's so cool.
I think I said 1867 earlier, but it is 1857 or 1867,
okay.
57. I don't know. I gotta check my notes, but it's 67 or 57 around that time. So that's where all of the hangings in Kingston took place.
Ooh.
After that opened. So there was a previous spot closer to downtown, closer to City Hall, the original county jail. But once Frontenac County Courthouse and Jail was open, it kind of became the go-to for the hangings. So in the past, we have been told 26. That was the number of hangings to have taken place at this gruesome site. But in reality, we will never really know for sure if that's the exact number, as the records back then were never well kept. Never. So the only thing we do know for sure is that the hangings in Kingston were quite a popular attraction.
Ew.
People came from all around to watch them, just like we would go to the movies on a Friday night, gather the family, come down and watch a good old hanging.
People back then were crazy.
I know, right? But like people in like 500 years from now might think we're crazy for sitting here talking to each other over.
True, especially about like gruesome things. They're gonna be like, they're disgusting.
Yeah. Why are they so into all of this?
Well, I think it's the whole like fascination. It's kind of like a train wreck you can't look away from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I would like, as morbid as it sounds, like I find talking about this stuff very fascinating, as morbid and gruesome as it can be. So that would be kind of like going and watching it happen, right?
I mean, and it's not like this stuff didn't happen. It absolutely happened.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
we
like
probably would be those people.
talking about how and why we don't do this anymore today.
Yeah, I would totally be that person.
Yeah. I just talk about how gross they are. And like, Jessica, we've mentioned a couple times on here how like they took souvenirs and stuff and we're like, oh, that's so disgusting. But then like here we are, the ones talking about all this stuff. So we probably would have been those creepy ones too. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I definitely would have been like one to go and watch like one of those autopsies where you could like sit in the surgery theater and just watch them do their thing.
Totally.
Yeah, so okay, maybe we are just as
sure
weird as those people.
Yeah.
So the ships in the harbor, Kingston is right on Lake Ontario. You can literally look across the water and see New York, the province, or the state, sorry, not the city.
Sorry.
They have states in the states, not provinces. So just kind of, again, give you kind of an idea as to where in the world Kingston is situated. So the ships in the harbor caught on to the fact that people were really enjoying coming to watch the hangings. And so they would just start advertising in advance when there was about to be a hanging in Kingston, and then sold a bunch of tickets to everyone from all around the Thousand Islands to come and watch them.
Gross.
They literally sold tickets like we sell tickets to go see a concert. and they hop on a boat. You come down to Kingston and you watch some poor guy get off. Like,
Ugh.
man. So we like to joke that it was Kingston's first tourist train.
Yay!
Oh, fun.
But there is a real reason behind why the hangings were so popular, and it's not any nicer. So at the Frontenac County Jail, you could see more gruesome details than you could anywhere else in the area that did hangings, and that was partly due to the way that the buildings were set up. So on the day of a hanging, people would pack into the prison yard to get a good view. And if it was extra busy, no worries. There's benches on the stables across the street, so you could just watch from over the wall.
Ugh. Oh.
Wonderful.
Too crowded in the yard, so let's sit in the nosebleeds. So at the very top of the main prison wall, there would have been a set of double doors that opened to reveal the prisoner and the executioner. But directly below the prisoner would have been trapdoors that open onto a very small but very brightly lit room with one little round window looking out onto the prison yard. Noose was placed on the prisoner's neck, and he would be dropped to hang right in front of that little window where everyone watching would have a perfect view of the inmate's every little twitch and shiver as he died.
Ugh.
Can you imagine?
No.
There is a house on the corner. It's called Macintosh Castle because it literally looks like a little castle. But one of the later owners of it built a widow's walk for his wife. So it's literally a custom viewing area for her to watch the hangings.
Oh, how
from
fun.
her own home.
That's nice.
Essentially like the quarantine version of going to the movies. Or like it's literally a Zoom call.
So you get your popcorn, get some pops, sit down as a family.
Yeah. And you just like go upstairs to your little viewing room and have a grand old time watching somebody die.
Perfect.
So it was common practice back then to bury the prisoners in the yard where they were executed. And when they eventually tore the jail down, they only found some of the alleged 26 bodies buried there. And can you, Jessica, guess how they found the bodies that they did find?
I would assume by digging.
You mentioned it earlier. They hired a man to use a dowsing rod because they didn't want to pay to have the area torn up.
That's so fun.
Yeah, so he did find some of the bodies with his dowsing rod, but he didn't find all of them. So they are, in fact, still buried there underneath the courthouse parking lot to this very day. There's a little divot in the courthouse parking lot, and there's a story back from Glenn, our founder, when he first started, because the original Downtown Haunted Walk tour in Kingston is the first Haunted Walk tour. It's been running since 1995, I believe, pretty much unchanged, so it is the OG Haunted Walk.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he took a group to the courthouse one evening, and he had a medium on his tour. And he just happened to take them over to that area. She was kind of standing over the little divot. And when he mentioned that the bodies were still buried here, she pointed down to the ground and went, "Yep, there's one right here."
Ew.
Mm-hmm. And so now I bring all my groups over there and I make them stand on that. And then I reveal it later. And it's so much fun. So much fun to see them like jump back. They're either like, "Oh, this is so cool," or they're like, "Okay, I've had enough," and they immediately jump out of it. So I'm always like, I need a volunteer to stand in this little divot.
I do it.
So there is obviously a ghost story tied to the place as well. So it's the Haunted Walk after all. There must be a ghost. So back when the jail was still standing, especially on nights of a full moon, people would report seeing an unusually pale man standing against the old prison wall. They would sometimes even notice that he has a rope around his neck, but if they actually dared to try and approach him, he would just disappear. So over the years, we have heard a lot of stories like this, a lot of them really similar, but some of the details like change here and there. But the most remarkable thing about all of those stories is that the man always stood in exactly the same spot against the wall. Exactly. No matter who is telling the story, the man stood in the exact same spot. That's an important detail. So the courthouse would soon find that out because as they began tearing down the jail in 1974, bricked up into the wall in the exact place everyone had claimed to see this man, they found a coffin.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
That's gross.
And inside that coffin was the body of a man who had been hanged.
Whoa.
Yeah, so can you imagine? There's no records of any sort mentioning anyone being bricked up into the wall. And for years and years and years and years, people would see the figure of a man with a noose around his neck standing in that exact spot.
Oh.
So we have no idea why they did that because the records aren't really well kept, but we managed to kind of come up with our best guess. That he was hanged unofficially by the guards who didn't get the permission of the court to do so. And so they couldn't bury him in the yard because then they would have to record it and write it down and stuff like that. So they brick him up into the wall and they hope no one ever finds him. So they did move his body to a local cemetery and they gave him a proper burial, and that seemed to calm that particular haunting. But many people who live and work in the area, they still claim to hear strange noises at night. And when they go investigate, they find nothing but an empty parking lot.
Yuck.
That's like my favorite location on the downtown tour, I'd say. It's one of my favorite stories to tell too, because it is so like, you're literally standing. You could be standing over like a buried body at any time, and we have no idea where they still are, and where the ones like that were dug up. Like what happened? Crazy. So there's downtown like tends to not have as many creepy things happen, but Michelle, who I mentioned earlier, who had all the crazy stuff happen to her at the fort, had a medium on her tour, and she literally just walked them into the courthouse parking lot, and the medium was like, people died here. Like she knew. Ugh. And she like explained the layout of the jail and everything, like how it would have looked. Like it's so creepy. Can you imagine? Okay, so I want to read out some of these like little quotes, just because they're so freaking funny. So I was like, I sent out so we have a Facebook group called Ghosts and Spirits, and it's essentially like all of the Kingston guides, and we just post whatever we like. We can keep up with each other. We can talk about work. We can talk about life and all that fun stuff. And so I have been chatting with them, and they all know that I was coming on this podcast tonight. They're all super excited about it. And so I said, podcast recording tonight. I want some quotes to end it off with. So in one sentence, what's your favorite thing about being a haunted walk guide? So here's some of the answers that I got. Getting to dress up, tell spooky stories, and have fun. Also, wearing a cloak. LMAO. Getting to look at history through a spooky lens and sharing it with others. And then Elaine, bless her heart. I am the cloaked Lorax. I do not speak for the ghosts, is how I can imagine she said it. Getting to bring people together through a one-of-a-kind experience and opening people's minds to things that they may have never known before. But also the cloak and lantern.
Yeah.
So finally, from Connor, being able to share stories and history in a really fun theatrical way with enthusiastic people.
Aww.
So in a nutshell, it's such a great company to work for. I am beyond grateful that they've given me a chance to come and work for them. And this will be my 5th season. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. I love them. So like, this is so cool.
Yeah. They're really good. Like we do staff events when we can, and COVID's not a thing. We do staff events every month. We do every couple of years, we'll invite Toronto and Ottawa down, and we'll do a big sleepover at Fort Henry where we essentially just like take over the fort for the evening.
I want to go.
And it's so fun and so creepy. And the Toronto guides were hearing voices the last time they were down. And so we just essentially, once all of the fort staff leave for the day, we've got free run of the fort for the evening. We stay in the barracks. We like dare each other to take Ouija boards into different rooms. We give anybody who hasn't been on a fort tour, so like some of the other guides who just haven't had the chance to come down and do it yet, we'll take them on a tour, and then we just have a fun night. We went, we did high tea for a staff event. We did We did like archery dodgeball where you like shoot arrows at each other. But it's like
Oh,
dodgeball, but you shoot it. It was a lot of fun too. So they're definitely the best in terms of creating like a big welcoming family, and then also extending that out to everybody that joins us on tours as well.
fun.
Really inclusive community, really amazing community, and so I'm ever so grateful to Glenn, to Jim, to Jax, my manager in Kingston as well, for giving me this opportunity and letting me come on this podcast to talk all about it too. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
It is a haunted walk. So it is Haunted Walks Incorporated, but then you have like the Haunted Walk of Kingston, the Haunted Walk of Toronto, the Haunted Walk of Ottawa, but it's Haunted Walks in total. And you can find absolutely everything that you need to know about our tours, about our events, about those virtual experiences as well. If you Google Haunted Walks, or you just go to hauntedwalks.com.
Perfect. Well, we loved having you on here, and we're very grateful to like Jim and your bosses for letting you come on, because this was super fun. And like I didn't realize how historic Kingston was, and I'm super like it was always a place that I wanted to avoid. I don't know why, but now I really want to come visit.
Kingston for many people was just a stop on the 401 in between Ottawa and Toronto, and
Yeah.
now we're really kind of starting to build the city for ourselves. This is something more than just a P stop on the side of the 401,
Yeah,
right?
it sounds so much fun.
Yeah, so downtown's booming. They're starting to put money back into some of the heritage projects, revamping some of the heritage homes and heritage buildings around the city as well, which I love to see, especially since Kingston tends to be pretty bad for building like new luxury apartment buildings,
Yeah.
which is absolutely not what we need in the city at the moment. So to see that they are still invested in some of these heritage sites around is really, really nice.
Fun.
Just means that they'll still be there for people years from now to come and enjoy too.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, this is so exciting. I never in a million years did I expect finding myself a new podcast to listen to would turn into literally me being on the podcast. So this is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the listeners and everybody listening, if you do want to follow us, we are on pretty much every social media site, #HauntedWalk. You'll get to hear all of the updates about what we're doing, all of the tours coming up, COVID things when we can open back up as well. Plus, if you've ever been on one of our tours and you took a really awesome photo, we absolutely want to see it. So please, 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 please tag #HauntedWalk in those.
Perfect. Bye, guys.
Woo!
Bye.